Hi everyone, I'm trying my autofocus today, so hopefully this video isn't super out of focus. Today I will be talking about The Damnation of John Donellan, A Mysterious Case of Death and Scandal in Georgian England by Elizabeth Cooke. And yes, I had to look at my phone real quick because I couldn't remember the little subtitle to it or whatever that's called when you have like a main title and then a brief description of what this book is actually about, like colon. The Damnation of John Donellan, colon, a mysterious case of death and scandal in Georgian England. Anyway, it's by Elizabeth Cooke. It is about the murder of this boy. I mean, he was 20 at the time, named Theodosius, if I'm pronouncing his name right. And obviously, at this time period, if he had turned 21, he would have come into his inheritance and gotten all this money. But he died when he was 20, and there were rumors that he was poisoned. So this sounded really intriguing, and Elizabeth Cooke definitely did her research. There's a lot of documents, there's a lot of letters from the time. Like, she didn't just go out and make up a book. This is a very nonfiction book about what happened during this time period and this murder trial that happened, and how his brother-in-law, so his sister's wife, Theodosius's sister's husband, was eventually accused of his murder. So it sounds really intriguing, right? And there's also a part of, hey, maybe his mother actually murdered him because she was sick of him, and he was kind of like a playboy, just running around and going out with girls, and then in his free time he just went hunting and fishing, and he wasn't super responsible. And so maybe she killed him because he was going to ruin their estate if he came into, his inheritance at 21 and was able to just do whatever he wanted with this money. So that was a really interesting aspect as well, that his mother might have been the person who murdered him. And they think that it was done by poison. Theodosius had syphilis that he got when he was 15, by the way. I'm like, can you keep it in your pants a little bit longer, buddy? Especially in this time period when they didn't have good medicine to fix all the ailments you get from STDs. Anyway, so he had syphilis from the time he was 15, so he was taking a bunch of medications to try and help with that, and probably other things that he contracted. I wouldn't be surprised. And they think that someone poisoned him through his medications by giving him the wrong one, or, slipping poison into it, or just giving him a vial that was like, yeah, here's your medicine, except it just totally wasn't at all. It was just a vial of poison. So, different theories about what happened. Sounds really interesting, right? Like, maybe it was his mom, maybe it was his brother-in-law, like, who was it? Except that I'm really sorry, I found it horribly boring. The first couple of chapters were good because it did talk about the murder and kind of the background, why his mom would have wanted to do it, what was Theodosius like, etc., etc. But then it got into like the family history for, I don't know, 5 chapters, and I was like, we don't need to know the complete family history to understand that these people were rich people in Georgian England who had lots of money and didn't want to lose their name and didn't want to lose their title and didn't want to lose their land. Like, we didn't need the complete history from, in the 1200s, Theodosia's great-great-great-grandfather moved to this place, like, it was, the family history part to me was ridiculous and boring because I felt that it had no bearing whatsoever on the case. The point is that at the time that this case happened, they were rich. And we didn't need to learn years of family history to know they were rich. Because, like, they have an estate, they have servants, like, obviously they're rich. You get that from the first couple of chapters. But there was family history for every main character, for his mom, for him, his sister, the brother-in-law. I was like, we don't really need to learn all of this to understand the case, in my opinion, because I didn't. I understood the case perfectly fine by skipping all these chapters, and basically every chapter in between until the last 2 chapters I thought were horribly boring, and it's not because I didn't try. I tried to read this book for about a week and a half. So, and every night I opened it and started reading and just could not stop thinking about how boring it was. Like I said, she does have a lot of documents from the time period, from the 1700s, and so it's a well-researched book, but it's just like, it's almost like there's too many documents shoved in your face, like these old letters being put out all the time that are obviously written in old-timey English, and it's not like I can't understand them, it's just that they're weird to read and boring and nothing really happens from them. And so even the trial chapter, when I was trying, no, it just wasn't interesting to me, because I thought you got from basically the first 2 or 3 chapters everything that you needed to know about this family, about the case, about why John Donellan, the brother-in-law, would be accused of this. I felt like that was all explained perfectly fine in the first 3 chapters, and I thought she would delve more into like an investigation, or yeah, like the trial, but make it interesting. But it was more like, and then this person wrote a letter to this person that said, hey, maybe he was poisoned and this and this. And so I don't know, I found it all very, very boring, which was sad. I thought she needed to craft a better story around these letters. And like I said, it's nonfiction, so don't make things up, but craft it in a better way where there's not all this huge middle chunk part of the book that is just dull. Once John Donellan was sentenced, and I mean, this is not going to give anything away. If you read the inside flap of the book, you know, I'm going to tell you right now. If you don't want to know what happens to John Donellan, plug your ears. He is executed. That part, those last 2 chapters where it described his execution and what happened to the family afterwards, those I found really interesting, because he did proclaim he was innocent the whole time, and it was kind of sad. And his wife, so Theodosius's sister, Theodosia, didn't ever come visit him in prison. But then her relationship with her mom was kind of messed up after that, so maybe she did suspect her mom. And it was sad. It was sad. Like, yeah, if this man didn't do it, that is the worst chapter, and one of the most heartbreaking chapters in the book is when he gets executed for something that he potentially didn't do. Could he have done it? Yeah. Could the mom have done it too and totally blamed it on him? Yeah, I can 100% see that, actually, because she did not seem like a good woman either. Like, her son just died. Her son-in-law was just executed, leaving her daughter a widow. And she's like moving to Bath, going around buying expensive furs. And I honestly think, of the 2 people, that yeah, maybe she did kill him because she wanted to keep all the money for herself, and she didn't want to have to rely on Theodosius being like, here's your allowance for the month, mom, but don't spend more than this, type thing. I can totally see her doing what she did, which is maybe poisoning her son. Well, what she maybe did, not what she did, because we don't know. There's no evidence to prove that she 100% did it. There's no evidence to prove that John Donellan 100% did it. And for all we know, Theodosius could have just died because he had syphilis, probably a bunch of other ailments, and who knows, like he definitely had mercury prescribed as a medicine. So hello, mercury poisoning. But just who else knows what they were giving him at that time period that could have just caused his body to, shut down and die. So yeah, it could have just been because he was being prescribed all this random crap that caused him to die. Maybe he wasn't murdered at all, but when once the rumor mill started, it didn't end, and it led to someone's death. And that was probably the most fascinating part of the book, was that there really, to me, wasn't any reason to believe that he'd been poisoned because of all the crap that doctors had already been giving him. And it did sound like the mother made a bunch of stuff up, like, oh yeah, John Donellan, like, washed these bottles afterwards, and he did this, and he did that, like, oh, maybe it was him. Oh, because I do think she just wanted to keep the money for herself. Like, I would vote for her being the murderer more than John Donellan. But the whole point of the book was to kind of prove that maybe they got it wrong, and it wasn't John Donellan, except I felt like the book didn't do that. The whole middle part was boring. And then the very, very last chapter was like, who could have killed him? It was literally pages and pages of questions. What if the prosecution had did this? What if the defense had done this? What if Anna Maria, that's the mom, had done this? What if this? What if this? And I was like, okay, but you aren't answering any of these questions. And the whole point that I read this book was to answer some of these questions. And literally, like, pages and pages of questions. What if John Donellan didn't do it? What if Theodosius just died naturally? What if this? What if that? What if... I'm like, this is your job as the writer, is to answer some of these questions. Like, you can't, because it happened back in 1700s. We don't got a time machine to go back and see what actually happened. I don't know. This book just upset me, mostly because it was very, very boring, but also that last chapter where it was just question after question after question after question. And I am not joking, like, paragraph of questions, paragraph, 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 just chocked full of questions, absolutely driving me insane. Anyway, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend this book unless you can plow through those middle chapters, which are, to me, so very boring. So boring. Oh my gosh. Like, I can't. Like I said, I tried. And some books I don't. Some books I'm like, this is boring. I give up. I'm not trying. This one I tried, like I said, for a week and a half to read it, and it was just so boring. Her writing just needed to craft it in a better way that made it more interesting and not focus on that middle chunk so much. Yeah. So that was The Damnation of John Donellan by Elizabeth Cooke. I don't suggest it unless you can go through those middle boring chapters. Like, it's an interesting case for sure, but I think that if you just, like, Googled it and found some articles online maybe about the case, that would be better. So, sorry, Elizabeth Cooke, I haven't read anything else you've written. Maybe you have written other books, but this one I can't really suggest because I found it just too dry. But like I said, if reading nonfiction with a lot of middle boring parts is your thing, then yeah, you would like The Damnation of John Donellan. And I don't want to smash like Elizabeth Cooke. I just thought her writing was dry, but she clearly did a lot of research, like clearly. So she's really good at that part. It was just the storytelling part and wrapping that research up in an interesting way that wasn't doing it for me. So, that was The Damnation of John Donellan by Elizabeth Cooke. My question today is, what old cases, we'll say before the 1900s, are you fascinated by? And of course, like, Jack the Ripper is going to be one of them, because you never found out who was doing that. And it doesn't even have to be mysteries. Well, something we know, like the stabbing of Caesar by Brutus and Caius, his friends, like, I get it. They wanted his power and stuff, but, like, man, that was brutal. Like, really, really brutal. So, those are the only two I can think of. I guess King Tut, there are rumors that he was murdered because he had a hole in his skull, I believe. But they also don't know if that was made because when they found King Tut's tomb, they did not treat, like, the sarcophagus or the body with any sort of respect at all. So it's even hard for researchers sometimes today to see, was that an injury from his time period, or did they just accidentally crack his skull open when they were taking him out of the tomb? Because no respect, right? So that kind of interests me too. Maybe King Tut was murdered, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't there. Yeah, those are some of the ones I can think of. Do you have an old case that you're interested in before the 1900s? Let me know down below, and please like, subscribe, and comment. I do try and post videos on Fridays. It's not going to be consistent because of work right now, but I do try. So yeah, like, subscribe. I did just start a writing podcast called Fighting for Writing. You can find it on basically every podcast channel: Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Podcast Republic, Apple Podcasts, whatever. It's on there. Thank you for listening, and if you like cases and you think you can plow through it, then check out The Damnation of John Donellan by Elizabeth Cooke. Sorry, if you saw me get startled there for a moment, it's because a hummingbird just zipped out of nowhere, and I thought it was a giant bee, like, honestly. But it was just a cute little hummingbird. Anyway, thank you for watching, and y'all have a great day.